sheriff's deputy shot and killed a black man as he was entering his own home in Columbus, Ohio. Casey Goodson allegedly looked suspicious to the sheriff's deputy. His name is Jason Mead. So he followed the 23-year-old as he was attempting to open his front door and enter his home. At that point, the sheriff's deputy, Mead, opened fire and shot and killed Casey Goodson. Now, this case should be fully investigated, but it's unclear whether it will be based on what I'm about to share with you. Now, more details into the shooting. Mead was working for the US Marshals Fugitive Task Force looking for violent offenders at the time. But Goodson was not the person being sought by the task force, Columbus police said. Goodson had put his keys into the door before he was shot and fell into the kitchen where his 5-year-old brother and his 72-year-old grandmother saw him laying on the ground with a Subway sandwich. So he was armed at the time with a concealed weapon that he had a permit for. It was a legal weapon. There is absolutely no indication that he engaged in any kind of altercation with the sheriff's deputy. But here's what the problem is. There were no other cops on the scene, and the sheriff's deputy who opened fire and killed him wasn't wearing a body camera. And so, he wasn't even alleged to be committing a crime at that time when he was shot. Nothing. This sheriff's deputy just alleged that, he looked a little suspicious.
Yeah, gee, I wonder why he thought he looked suspicious. Armed protesters showed up in front of the house of the Michigan Secretary of State. They also showed, she's a Democrat, and they also showed up in front of the house of the Speaker of the House in Pennsylvania. He's a Republican, but they came armed. Now, I presume some of them are licensed to carry that. I hope so. None of them got shot by the cops. The cops saw that and they're like, "Oh, you're here to threaten public officials with your weapons. Totally fine. You got your Second Amendment rights. Go ahead and try to bully them, intimidate them. Their kids are in the house. Have at it, Hoss. Right? No problem at all. You got your Second Amendment rights. Oh, black guy with a Subway sandwich. Shoot him. He's going into his own house. He put a key in the door, thereby indicating he owns the house. Shoot him and kill him, just in case. Just in case. Well, what happened to his Second Amendment rights? Oh no, he's black. No, he's got a Second Amendment right to die.
Remember, no, it is pretty incredible because I mean, if a 17-year-old crosses state lines with an illegal weapon and then proceeds to shoot and kill 2 protesters, well, then he's an American hero, and the cops will let him go home that night and then turn himself in later. And I'm specifically talking about Kyle Rittenhouse, who opened fire on protesters, killing 2 and injuring 1 other in Kenosha, Wisconsin. But when it comes to a black individual who's not committing a crime, who has an absolutely squeaky clean record, who has a license to carry a concealed weapon, no, but he looks suspicious, so let me open fire as he's putting the keys in his door to open the front door to his own home. By the way, when the authorities showed up, the keys were still in the door.
Yeah, if you're a detective, that's a pretty good clue that you shouldn't shoot the guy because it's his place. So look, Anna, great point on Rittenhouse. I hadn't thought of it quite that way. In his case, he wasn't even doing it the legal way, and then he murdered people with it. And they let him go. They finally arrest him because, golly gee, I guess we got to go arrest this guy. They'd given him water before the shootings. They were very friendly with him. They're like, oh, right-wing militia come here with illegal weapons. Great, we love you guys, right? And we showed you that video before. But MAGA raised $2 million to get Rittenhouse out on bail. Now, if you're an NRA member or you're a gun rights advocate, shouldn't you be on this guy's side? He was a legal gun owner, mowed down by the tyrannical government. Jackbooted thugs of the government killed this legal gun owner. Yet I don't hear anything from them. But you don't have to try to guess as to whether the NRA and right wingers will help these legal gun owners who were brutally murdered for no reason. We had Philando Castile, it already happened. He was a legal gun owner. He told the police, I have a license, let me show you. And before And he listened to all of the cops' instructions. They always say, gotta listen to the cops. Philando Castile did listen to the cops. He did everything they asked him to do. They killed him anyway. And did they do a big fundraising drive for Philando Castile? No. Gee, I wonder why, huh? Yeah, no, I'm sure it has nothing to do with their race. I'm sure you guys are really into the Second Amendment and into the Constitution, which, by the way, some of you now want to suspend and declare martial law so that Trump could be dictator. But you pretended to be in favor of that. But when it affects black people, nowhere to be found.
Well, I think it's also worth talking about what is happening with an investigation into this, or the lack of investigation. So the Columbus police notified the public, and I want to be clear, the Columbus police are not behind this shooting. This was a sheriff's deputy who opened fire with the Franklin County Sheriff's Office. However, the Columbus police, which was not involved in the shooting, announced Monday that the investigation had been turned over to the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation at the request of Columbus Police Chief Thomas Quinlan. Now, here's the problem. The Ohio Bureau of Investigation has actually rejected the case, because the case wasn't brought to them until 3 days after the shooting took place. They said, quote, "We received a referral to take a 3-day-old officer-involved shooting case, not knowing all the reasons as to why so much time has passed before the case was referred to BCI. We cannot accept this case." Now, when I read that first part of the statement, I was pretty enraged, I'm not gonna lie. Like, why can't you take the case? They should have brought it to you immediately, but even so, 3 days later, why wouldn't you want to investigate this? They claim BCI has an existing memorandum of understanding with the Columbus Police Department. As they know, the BCI is their first call when an incident occurs. BCI is the first call because we cannot be the subject matter experts unless we're on the scene from the beginning to document the evidence of what happened from the start. 3 days later, after the crime scene has been dismantled and the witnesses have all dispersed, does not work. And so think about it. The cop wasn't wearing a body camera. The Columbus Police Department didn't refer this case to the Ohio Bureau of Investigation. So any evidence that was on the scene was probably either dismantled or doesn't exist anymore. So I think they have a legitimate concern, but it still needs to be investigated. What, we're just gonna leave it alone?
Yeah, let me just say, I don't believe a word of it. So hey, look at that. A cop caught a lucky break. That golly gee, we just can't investigate him. Well, when Trump files lawsuits 30 days too late, or in Pennsylvania a year too late, they're like, oh yeah, I mean, what's the big deal about the time and stuff? Oh, cop shot and killed someone. Oh, you missed it by 13 seconds. And the other police departments did refer to the other investigative division in time. What a coincidence! And yet another lucky break for cops. Let me ask you guys this, and it doesn't matter if you're right wing. Everybody knows the answer. Do you think if it was a cop who was shot, they'd be like, "No, sorry, you're past the deadline, past the 3-day deadline. We just can't investigate. You're free to go, everybody." No way, no way, no way. Now it'd be a different process, but they'd be like, "No, a cop was shot. That's his life mattered. No, we're gonna put every resource in the state to figure out who shot him," as they should. Oh, a black guy was shot for apparently no reason while entering his own home. You missed the deadline. Oh, and it was by a cop. Oh, you definitely missed the deadline. Golly gee, nothing we could do.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.